Antonio Rudiger, one of the most informed or maybe transformed players under Thomas Tuchel, is rumored to be a loggerhead for Chelsea Football Club for a new contract. Some say he's asking for £400,000 a week. Some say he's asking for £200,000 a week. But the question is, will Antonio Rudiger remain at Chelsea Football Club or will he leave the club? Stay tuned to find out. Dan, welcome back to Chelsea Perspective.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be back. Always enjoyed talking football with you.
And thank you very much. It's always good to have you with me to present things from an intellectual perspective, or let me say, from an objective perspective to the Chelsea fan base. So good to have you around. So Dan, Antonio Rudiger's situation is so concerning, so scary, because you could argue at the moment we don't have any left center back player who's as good as he is. Nobody plays like he does. He brings aggression, he brings passion or greed. Whenever he's on the pitch, I'd say that opposition attackers, they must dread playing against Antonio Rudiger. So what happened? Why did the club leave it so late?
It's a very difficult and alarming situation, isn't it? It's a very hard question to ask or to answer, simply because in football things are very often, they're not very clear. It's not a case of ones and zeros like binary. It's all a very murky underworld of different things that happen in contract negotiations. And to the fact that Rudiger is playing at such a world-class level and is probably arguably Chelsea's most informed defender since Thomas Tuchel took over makes the situation all the more alarming. Now, we could probably argue that going into these negotiations, perhaps, I'm sure they will have started well before this season, perhaps even a year or so ago. Rudiger was probably arguably not at the same level in terms of his status in Chelsea as he is now. So that's maybe something to consider with respect to this situation. But as with anything, times change and Chelsea should change with it, especially when they have a world-class centre-back on their books. But as I've said previously, in football, things with contracts are often very difficult to understand, especially in the sense that we are not privy to the details and the negotiations behind the scenes. Rudiger has kept very quiet on the contract situation. He's been at pains to make sure that he doesn't give anything away. And everything that's come out of his camp and everything that's been reported has never indicated that he does not want to play for Chelsea. In fact, it's been the contrary. But there are factors for him to consider as well. Given the fact that he'll be 29 in March, this is likely his last big contract as a football player. So he's likely, from a human perspective, to want to maximize the financial potential of his next contract, simply because he doesn't have as much time left in the game as maybe some of the younger players at Chelsea. So it's very important for him to get as much financially out of a deal as he possibly can to safeguard his family's financial future. And it's not to say that he's being greedy or anything like that, but he's got to think about the realities of his situation. So there are many different factors that could delay this deal from both Rudiger's standpoint and from Chelsea's standpoint. But it's difficult to really draw a line across all of them and say definitively that this is why it's taken so long.
Yeah, I mean, and again, something you say that really hit the note right there is, not to see him as greedy, because he's a human after all, and we must recognize that football is what Rudiger does for a living. Football is how he earns how he puts food on the table for his family. So it's only natural at his age, which is 29, like you mentioned, for him to go for what is best for him, his family, and his future. So people just don't seem to see things from the player's own perspective. They just jump to conclusions, calling the player names, saying he's greedy, this, that, but that's, by the way, Dan. So let's be specific about it. Why did the club leave it so late? Do they not know the risk involved in leaving it so late?
Of course they know the risks. Of course they know the risks. But I think if one thing's been proven over the course of her reign at Chelsea is that Marina Granovskaya is a very calculated negotiator, and she won't have left it this late if she doesn't think that that the club will benefit from doing so. And I don't think the fact that Chelsea are doing this is necessarily a bad thing nor a coincidence. I think there's obviously a reason for it, and it's not a sinister reason either. There's probably very tangible negotiations happening behind the scenes, and as with any negotiation in any form of life, things take time, and sometimes with time scales aren't always ideal. It's dangerous nowadays because of the Bosman ruling to leave a player's contract to the final year, because from January the 1st, Rudiger can talk to any club he likes and agree a deal with them for June 2022 or July 2022 onwards. So from that perspective, it is dangerous by Chelsea to leave it this late, but I very much feel that they're well aware of this, and they'll be working very hard to resolve the situation, because from everything that I've read and I've encountered, the intention is not to let Rudiger go, but to find some kind of compromise that suits both parties.
Yeah, great response right there. Okay, let me ask you this. Would you say the reason why the club left it so late is because at some point, especially under Frank Lampard, or even before before the club hired Frank Lampard, there was a time it seemed as if he was on his way out of the gates of Stamford Bridge, because he hardly played under Frank Lampard. He played, but he didn't play enough games as he would have expected. So would you say the club didn't expect him to pick form the way he did under Thomas Tuchel?
It's quite possible. I think that's certainly a reasonable explanation. But as I said, Chelsea are smart enough to move with the times. So I think they would have accelerated the conversations with regard to a new contract. And I don't think that they had any desire to let Antonio leave for free in any scenario. I think that Marino's shown in certain deals when players go out on loan that they often sign a contract extension, like Michy Batshuayi has just done so, and he's gone to Besiktas. So in any event, I think she would have tried to recoup some kind of financial benefit for Chelsea if Rudiger was to leave, even when he was not playing for Chelsea. But the fact that he has shown this level of performance, that he's probably Chelsea's number one defender at the moment on form, I think that's exacerbated these conversations. It's highlighted and put a real magnifying glass on this contract situation.
Wow, I hope they come to a compromise, or to meet each other in the middle and sort out the situation, because Rudiger is such an important player to the team or to the club at this point, that if he leaves, it will be very difficult to find a like-for-like replacement for him, because what he brings to the table is something that you don't find everywhere. He's such a fine defender, and you could argue he's developed something new under Thomas Tuchel, that signature run from our own half of the pitch to the opponent's half, and he's done that on occasions and has also created chances from that run. He's also been close to scoring from that is moving the ball from our own area to the opponent's half. So I sincerely do hope the club will find a solution. So now, that's by the way. Would you say that Antonio Rudiger knew exactly what he was doing? Because a while ago, whenever he's interviewed, when the contract was still a year or two or so, if you asked him if he's in talks with the club for a new contract, his response to that question has always been that he's not in a hurry to go into a contract negotiations with the club. Do you think he wanted it to come to this? Because it's just his answers then seemed as if he wasn't concerned. He wasn't really concerned. So now the ball is, you could say, is in his court. You know, he has the whole card. Chelsea practically has nothing right now. So would you say he knew exactly what he was doing when he didn't, you know, seek for a contract renewal when he should?
I think the Bosman ruling, I believe it was in 1997, that transferred the power from the clubs to the players, has predicated this kind of situation in the sense that it's transferred almost all the power to the player, in that they can run down their contract and leave for free. Whereas before, obviously, the club would have to retain some kind of fee, no matter if the player was out of contract or not. So I certainly I don't think he's cunning or sinister in his actions. I think he's certainly just trying to maximize, as I said before, the best possible financial outcome for him and for his family. But from a positive standpoint, I don't think there's ever been any intention for him to leave, as much as he's been mum about his contract situation, which is perfectly fine with respect to the legalities of contracts. You never want to expose any kind of information like that. I think from his standpoint, as I said, he hasn't done anything untoward, and he hasn't shown that he wants to leave. He's put across a persona or an idea that he's very much for the Chelsea cause. The way that he plays shows that he's very much committed to Chelsea. The way that he trains, he's been the consummate professional. And even when he was left out of the side under Frank Lampard, he didn't, you know, moan and groan all the time. Obviously, I'm sure he would have preferred to play. Maybe one or two comments he made that he would have preferred to play, as any professional player would have. But I think from his standpoint, there hasn't been any clear indication that, okay, I really want to leave.
Yeah, I think I must commend you for highlighting his behavior under Frank Lampard, where he was hardly used and he didn't complain. He remained professional, and that showed his commitment to the club. And thank you very much for explaining that there's no, you cannot argue that it was his intention to leave it to, so that it comes to this where the whole thing depends on him or his decision to stay or to leave the club. And again, but that's by the way, and we must also remember that he has to make the decision that will be best for him, his future, and his family, because football is what he does for a living. So let me ask you this question. Does he deserve a raise?
Yes.
Okay, if you say he deserves a raise, Dan, can you tell us why?
Because of the fact, like the things that you've mentioned, he's performing to a world-class level. He's probably Chelsea's only left centre-back in the back three system, and he's proven to be a professional. He's proven to have taken on a leadership role, to have nurtured some of the younger players and the players like the German players who have come in. He is very much for the Chelsea cause. You could see after his interview in the Champions League final, when they asked him about his goal-saving tackle on Phil Foden, they asked him, surely you should take some commendation for that, Then he said, no, well, we are Chelsea, we cover each other, that's how we work. So he's very much been for the Chelsea cause. And I think that's been clear in every single thing that he's done. He's never really wavered in the Chelsea identity. And I think that's my summation of Antonio as a player.
Yeah, I think he's proven that he deserves a raise, and it's important to also point out that most of the players in the team, even the younger ones, earn more money than Antonio Rudiger. And I'd say, while I'm not the club, as a human being, it's only fair that at least he measures a salary of those players, most of which has done more for the club than they have done. But that's by the way, Dan. So we move to the purpose of this video, which is to try and find positives from this situation, to try and see reasons why we believe Antonio Rudiger will sign a new contract and remain at Chelsea Football Club. So Dan, do you think Antonio Rudiger will put pen to paper and remain at Chelsea Football Club? If the answer is yes, can you please tell us and make us understand why you think that he's going to sign a new contract and will remain at Chelsea Football Club?
I think he will remain at Chelsea, but my level of certainty is not as strong as it would be given his age and given the fact that he's in the final year of his contract. If I had to apply a percentage to it, I would say I'm probably 60% sure that he'll remain, probably 40% unsure whether he'll leave. The reasons that he would stay is obviously because he is playing in an ultra-competitive team surrounded by world-class players. His family is acclimatized to London. He's got friends. And I firmly also believe that Chelsea will have the intention to reward him financially for his contributions. As I've read, some of the figures that have been quoted have been too low for his liking. So I feel sure that Chelsea are smart enough to come to a compromise with Rudiger and keep him at the club performing at the level that he is performing. It's very rare that I've ever seen Chelsea let go of a world-class performer, especially for free. So I'm very sure that the club will come to some kind of agreement. Yes, Rudiger does hold all the power, but it is also in his interests to remain at Chelsea so that he can continue competing at the highest level. And for Premier League titles, for Champions League titles, FA Cup trophies, those kinds of trophies, Chelsea have proven that they're a club that can do that. They can compete with Europe's elite. So Rudiger has all the conditions around him, both practically and hopefully financially, that will incentivize him to remain at Chelsea.
Yeah, that's a great response to that question. You've mentioned some great reasons why you see him remaining at the club. His family, the size, you could say the size of the club and how competitive that is. We have a very strong squad, and he likes to win. And at Chelsea, he gets a chance to win even more trophies. And the club also would look to reward him for his commitment to the club and how well he served the club and how much of a professional he's been since he's joined the club. So those are just a few reasons. And if you think we've missed any of the reasons why you think Antonio Rudiger will put pen to paper and remain at Chelsea Football Club, please let us know in the comments section. And please don't forget to smash that like button, subscribe to the channel if you haven't, and more importantly, click on the bell notification button so you don't miss anything. Dan, again, I must say it's been an absolute pleasure presenting this video with you, because your knowledge of the game and knowledge of the club is awesome, and I will always look to bring you back and tap into your knowledge. So Dan, thank you again. Can you please take some time before we call it a day? Tell the viewers who you are and about your podcast. If you have anything coming on, let them know.
Okay, I'm Dan Hill. I'm a little Chelsea blogger for a page called the Chelsea Social, and Vavel's a global publication in the United Kingdom. I write about Chelsea. I'm now talking about Chelsea with gentlemen like you, and I do run a small little Premier League based podcast with my friends, with two of my good friends. We just talk and have a little bit of fun about the Premier League. It's called the Eish, another football podcast. It's available on Google, on Apple, and on Spotify, so you can find it on all of those platforms. You can find me on Twitter by my handle over here, which you kindly shared, and I love to talk about Chelsea, so please, anytime, come and join me.
Yeah, Dan, again, it's been an absolute pleasure presenting this video with you. Again, like I said before, your knowledge of the game is something that I always look to tap into, so I will always bring you back to Chelsea perspective to talk football, especially from the perspective of Chelsea Football Club. Again, Dan, thank you so much for finding the time to be here with me.
Thank you so much. It's been an honor.
And people, before I say goodbye, please make sure to go check out Dan's podcast. I will provide the complete information for the podcast in the description section, so you go check it out. And it is bye from me, and my guest Dan. See you guys next time. Cheers.